Movies are big, and that's just a fact. Major blockbusters cost and hopefully earn millions of dollars, and while smaller than they were in the past, movie theaters only contribute to making them feel more exciting and grand. Even if there was, for example, a one-night only event for an indie show, that would still be a big deal, and in the case of TPOT 20, it is a big deal. A wide release across an entire country is a major accomplishment, and I think that's important to remember, while also thinking about the quality of the episode on its own. That's why I'll be taking a look at TPOT 20 in a pretty comprehensive way through mostly looking at the content of the episode itself, with some comparisons and discussion about the hype behind its release. So with that, let's talk about the new, biggest TPOT episode. Before diving right into the deep end though, let's set the stage of this episode by talking a bit about the hype. You see, after TPOT 19 had a lot of major stuff go down, most fans were left in awe and already wondering about where TPOT 20 would go from there. Just look at all the plot threads left on the table, and while there was no way everything would be covered in a single episode, the mystery as to what TPOT 20 would focus on started a hype train that was already zooming at top speed. The excitement continued to grow between July and September, but the theater announcement on September 18th caused expectations to once again explode, turning what was originally just a hotly anticipated episode to another major event that felt quite similar to TPOT 18's VidCon premiere. Both were one-day only special events with the episode coming out shortly after. Both had lots of excitement as to what they'd be about. Both had major expectations thanks to said special premieres. And, oh yeah, they're both non-competition episodes. That's a lot of overlap. Yet the biggest difference between them has to be, well, TPOT 18 led to a battlefield of mixed opinions through its defenders and haters. TPOT 20 has been received quite well. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, though, as before we continue to play the comparison game between these episodes specifically, I should get into the episode at hand. So we open with Nine chilling and having a somber moment on an alien planet, which gets one so pissed that we got a flashback 16 years ago to explain her backstory. This right here is the primary point of the episode, learning about how every number got powers and what led one down the road of villainy. Structure-wise, it's a pretty big departure from all the other non-competition episodes, with all the characters and mini plotlines they've needed to balance, yet that focus feels totally justified because the information we're learning, especially in this first half, is really important and answers a lot of questions that have been circulating for years. Now, I'm not going to pad time by summarizing everything, or making my sentences drag out way longer than they need to be like I'm doing right now, but there is a lot to discuss, with one being the one with the most interesting developments. She's portrayed at the start of the episode as being very sympathetic in her loneliness and wanting to be included. This is a totally new side to her character, and despite knowing her malicious future, you kinda start to feel bad for one. It makes the scene of her discovering and harnessing the power of the Yoyolite meteor a hopeful, yet worrying one, and you get why she decides to share the power with 3 in an effort to become friends with her. Speaking of which, this is the first time we've seen 3 actually talk, and her stern yet also goofy and compassionate personality is nothing like you'd expect from the way she was alluded to. She has the qualities one wants in a friend, and for a brief few hours it seems like sharing the powers with her was a great idea, and that 3 will totally keep it a secret from everyone else, until the next morning where 3 has already coached everyone else on how to use them. This creates a bit of a narrative shift, as now instead of feeling mostly bad for one, things get a bit messy. Herself being upset at 3 for breaking a promise is valid, but the foundation of that promise was a selfish one, built on wanting to hoard all the power like a tyrant or landlord. Oh, and killing 3 in a rage, and then only being able to recover her as a glitchy husk is a big mistake, and it makes an already dense argument for both their characters even denser. For one, this scene is the climax to all the red flags we've seen her show throughout the episode, with how her fear of being alone again, and frustration with being lonely, caused her to go too far after gaining the power to do so. It does a great job at grounding her character, in another way we haven't really gotten to see in prior episodes. From this moment, we now know that while some of her anger does make sense, what she did with that anger, accidental or not, can't be justified. Like, yeah, 3 is being stern to her, and isn't on her hands and knees apologizing, but as we saw earlier this episode, the way 3 deals with conflict is through using harsh words. Hell, when you think about how she's at least trying to explain herself, even after 1 just tried attacking everyone, 3 is being very reasonable here. Unfortunately for her though, 1 was in no mood to receive any pushback, which is what resulted in her broken mind and body. The situation is only made worse by 1 trying to harness more power to fix the mistake, which leads to 4 and everyone else combining powers to banish her in the moon, with only a thirst for revenge as her company. Now that's the end of the first half, but before moving on, I want to remain on that banishment for a moment. As while 4 had good intentions in exiling someone who could be dangerous, it still ends up as a questionable choice that shows a bit more of the theme in this episode about how power can lead to corruption. We know from BFB that 4 gets a little evil because of his power too, and his choice to seal 1 away in the moon, to me, shows a super early glimpse at that. Like in this moment, 1 genuinely does want to right her wrongs, but instead of even attempting to reopen a conversation between them, he leads the charge in trapping her in a confined space in a way that is all too similar to how he'd eventually host BFB. It's a moment that makes the conversation between 4 and 1 near the end of the episode very interesting, but we're not quite there yet, as we still have some gaps in the story to fill. In fact, filling gaps in the story is the whole point of the second half of the episode, which, while not bad at all, does feel weaker than the first half. We see everything come together, being 1's escape, and plan to get revenge by going full hitman, and sowing chaos through making deals to take everyone's power, with an endgame goal to use that power to fix 3. Now that goal is morally good, but as we've seen in other episodes and in this episode, her methods of gaslighting, manipulating, kidnapping, torturing, and erasure all go way too far. She can't sidestep her misdeeds with a YouTube apology, because the fact is that through her cruel actions, 1 is not a nice person, just as Leafy tells her. I actually think this scene between them is the best part of the episode, as it's able to portray 1 in a more clumsy and incompetent way that doesn't undercut her intimidation because of the power she now wields. Leafy is also really good here through her rage baiting, and I like how we finally know what happened to her after TPOT 13. That being said, while I do quite like this scene, I will criticize some of the scenes surrounding it with how a lot of them are kind of unnecessary. Like, yeah, seeing the beginning stages of the plan come together like a heist movie is neat, and the scenes showing 1 making deals with Barf Bag and Needle are good too, but I think having some details remain a mystery would make her seem more threatening, while also improving the pacing of the episode. It's a problem that all the 40+ minute episodes have, and while there is a lot to cover here, I could see the second half dragging a bit on rewatches, so I think that trimming down some of the less needed moments could make the episode flow much better in the long run. On a more positive note though, we're coming up on the end of the episode where we see some more big revelations in the present day. First, we learn that Pencil got transported back into the past, which was the deal Pencil struck with One at the end of TPOT 19, but whether One held up her end of the bargain was kind of up in the air. Now that her location is confirmed though, I think there's a lot of intrigue as to what could happen next for Pencil. Like, could she destroy the timeline? Is this even really the past? Is there a catch with the remote control? And could she be disqualified from the main game if she's missing in the present? It'll for sure be a cool plotline to see develop, but continuing on, we then see that conversation between 4 and 1 that I brought up earlier. He first tries to say he's not a danger to her, and when that doesn't work, he stands by his decision to seal One away and says she can't control all that power. This shows a bit of stubbornness in standing by his methods, even after everything that happened in BFB, but I think he'll quickly learn how bad of a solution sealing One away was, now that he's in the same boat. Now I'm not sure how much of a focus he'll get in the near future, with how One booted the moon away, but whatever 4's role becomes, I think it'll be another cool plotline. From there, the episode ends where it began, with One absorbing 9 for more power, along with some crumbs of winner and loser, in a post-credit scene that also has Fiery Jr., which I don't think anybody expected. So yeah, that's the episode, and now that I'm through it all like Charlie Puth, I want to talk about TPOT 18 again. Now I already spoke about this a few months ago, but a big part of why that episode was seen as disappointing was because it failed to live up to the massive expectations it had, as a big premiere with a cast we haven't seen in years, when in reality the episode wasn't trying to be all that big. TPOT 20, on the other hand, had those same massive expectations, but was actually able to live up to them through having plot reveals and a focused story structure that gave it a sense of uniqueness, almost like a movie. But just because it was able to live up to those hefty expectations doesn't mean there aren't any complaints though. I already said mine with the pacing in the second half, but this episode also creates some plot holes that I won't really get into because they could be explained in the future, along with some disappointment in how no one got eliminated, nor was there much progress in the present day plot. Now personally, I don't really mind having to wait on Jacknjellify to cook, but even if I did, I don't think a non-competition episode should be lambasted too harshly for not progressing the main story, since that's not why they exist. They're meant to fill in gaps or add context that can't really be explored in a competition setting. And as BFDI gains a larger emphasis on the story, there's a larger need for them to be made. The way I see it, TPOT 20 is yet another really strong non-competition episode, thanks to how it grounds the main villain, reveals important lore, and sets up new plot points that could be expanded on in future episodes. The more focused nature of it does make me feel like it was worthy of its one-day cinematic release, and said plot revelations allow it to stand as one of TPOT's biggest episodes. That's all I gotta say. If you haven't, please subscribe, like, hype, share, hit that bell, comment if you have any thoughts, and thank you for watching.